Welcome to the Fresh Food Feeding for Dogs web application. Because this is a web application, it doesn't matter what platform you are on. So it doesn't matter if you're on Android, a laptop, or an iPhone. If you're on a smartphone, you can go ahead and save this page to your home screen. If you're not sure how to do that, you can do it Google. The first thing you're going to need to do is register a new account. Once you've done that, we're going to log in. You'll see two options, view my dogs and add new dog. Because we're new, we're going to add a new dog. We're going to add Johnny. Johnny is 10 kilos. Now they're going to ask for Johnny's date of birth. If you don't know, just put in a guesstimate because all this is doing is figuring out what life stage that your dog is at in relation to how much your dog needs to eat. All right, I'm going to click submit. Johnny has been added. Click View Johnny. I'm going to tell you some information about Johnny. Johnny is 10 years old. His current mass is 10 kilos. If this changes, you can click this edit button. Now, here's the interesting part of where the calculations happen. Intake, 2.5% of body weight. When we're feeding a bath ratio diet, to figure out how much to feed your dog, it does this very broad calculation. And for a dog to maintain their current weight, it calculates 2.5% of their body weight and it suggests to feed that, okay? All right, so if you know what you're doing, you can click override. For instance, if you're quite savvy with these ratios and you have a working dog that you know needs to be fed around 6% of their body weight, you can go ahead and change it here. Scroll down. Now, this is where we can change these ratios in a very automatic way. So if we want Johnny to lose weight, we click lose weight. That will drop his percentage of body weight that we're going to feed from 2.5 to 2%. Maintain weight is what it's currently sitting at, which is 2.5%. If Johnny needs to gain weight, we're going to bump that up to 3% automatically. All right, so the daily total. So the daily total is going to be 250 grams. Now, Johnny here's an adult. He's 10 years old, so he would at least get one feed a day. However, you can take this entire total of the 250 grams and divide it into how many meals that you're feeding, all right? Now, this is a very important part of feeding a ratio diet. Feeding guidelines are only guidelines and should never be complied with at the detriment of the dog. Apply the guideline for 1 to 2 weeks and then increase, decrease based on your dog's body condition, i.e., do you need to reduce or increase their dietary intake? This is the same as if you were to feed a dry food or a commercial fresh prepackaged food. Whatever the guidelines say are only guidelines. You're never ever going to let your dog become underweight or overweight just because it's said to feed a certain amount. So take a common sense approach there, okay? Now, the BARF ratios are broken down into muscle meat, bones, plant matter, secreting organ, and liver. So it tells you here how much of each you're going to feed. It starts with muscle meat and raw meaty bones. So it says we're going to feed, of the 250 grams it told us that we need to feed per day, 162.5 grams of that is going to be muscle meat and raw meaty bones. Now, to balance the calcium, we know that we need to feed around 10% actual bone content. Now, this is where a lot of new people to raw feeding will bail out because, for instance, say a chicken neck that might only be around about 36% bone, they then have to figure out, okay, so a chicken neck is 36% bone and I need to feed 10% bone. How many chicken necks do I need to do that, to feed in order to do that? Well, gosh, who wants to do that? But don't worry, we've got you covered and I'm going to show you how to do that very, very soon. Next is plant matter, 62.5%. If you click on the view button, it's going to give you a whole bunch of different examples, all right, just to inspire you. Click the back button. Secreting organ. Secreting organ, and you're like, what is a secreting organ? Click view. That would be spleen, kidney, pancreas, thymus, testicles, and ovaries and brain. You'll probably just keep to the basics, being kidney whilst you're starting out, and that is absolutely fine. So you're going to be feeding 12.5 grams of that, and that is around about 5% of their total intake. Liver, Again, 5%, 12.5 grams. Now, secreting organ and liver, we're going to call that offal, okay? Those are the dog's multivitamins, so it is incredibly important that they make up the correct amount of the diet. If, for example, your dog is a Dalmatian who can't have a high purine diet, which offal is high in purines, you need to be able to do your research or touch base with a nutritionist and find out other foods that you can feed instead of that. You may actually have to give a supplement. All right. Now, just below here, we have this button that says override all ratios. And I would not be clicking on that unless you absolutely know what you're doing. And then it says build a recipe. I'm going to show you that very soon. First of all, let's go and figure out how we're going to work out how much bone to feed our dogs, okay? Click view. Excellent. So it says here, Johnny is currently fed 55% of muscle meat and 10% of bone. So together, that 65% of their diet is going to be that muscle meat and bone. All right. Now, we're going to click on this bone calculator to figure out how this is all going to go down. Select an RMB. That stands for raw meaty bone. I'm going to be, in this instance, choosing a chicken neck. Okay, chicken neck. Excellent. If you scroll down, it tells you the bone percentages of different bones, so it's easy for you to sort of go through and go, oh, do you know what? Beef ribs are really high in bone, and that's just easy. I'm just going to do that. Then I won't need to feed so much. Totally up to you what you do. So, chicken neck, let's click calculate. Okay, so I wanted just to take you back for a second. When we first got our information on Johnny, it told us that we need to feed 250 grams per day. That says it's right there, right? And we now need to figure out how many grams of bone to feed our dog, Johnny, in order to meet that 10% requirement. Come on down to this big text here, okay? It's going to tell us that we need to feed 69 grams of chicken necks and 93.5 grams of muscle meat. Where have those numbers come from? Okay, so if you remember, of the 250 grams that told us that we need to feed Johnny in total, that's his plant, his offal, everything, 162.5 grams of that needed to be meat and bones. Now, if you add 69 grams and 93.5 grams together, you get that 162.5 grams. So, of that meat and bone ratio, 69 grams of that is going to be chicken necks and 93.5 grams is going to be muscle meat. So, for example, muscle meat, sometimes people get confused. Muscle meat is meat, okay? It's the muscle of an animal. So, in this case, with Johnny, I'm going to feed 69 grams of chicken neck and 93.5 grams of chicken mince. All right? Hopefully that makes sense to you there. Now, we can just end this here. We can go, okay, cool. You go off and you figure out, you know, what meats, what offals, and what plant matter you want to feed. You go do that yourself. Or let us inspire you. Click the recipe builder. Build your recipe. Don't get overwhelmed. This is just asking you to select the animal proteins that you want to feed. So, as I just said before, I'm going to feed chicken. I'm going to chuck in some chicken liver. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to select a plant source. I'm going to go broccoli, bok choy, parsley, avocado. Select a dairy source. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to select kefir. Select a herbal source. You don't have to do this either. I'm going to choose bruise hips. Select other source. You don't have to choose this either. I'm going to chuck in a pinch of iodized salt for my iodine. Click assess. Save, view recipe. Your saved recipe for Johnny. So it tells you, you know, what you've chosen there. Now, here's where we can get a little bit fancy. Your recipe may is the keyword, have the following nutrient gaps. This is not a scientific analysis of the macro and micronutrients of the recipe. Therefore, we cannot tell you definitely what gaps you have, in turn the amounts needed to feed to fill these assumed gaps. Fresh food feeding is based on the principle to feed a variety of ingredients on rotation to balance over time versus in one meal. So let's, for instance, say that you're totally happy with this recipe and these assumed nutrient gaps you're going to cover at another time. Or let's say you want to know what they are and you just want to fill those gaps now. So fiber, we're going to click on fiber. I'm going to choose, it says bones here, but bones for a lot of dogs will be enough. But I always believe the dogs actually need more fiber than that for their gut health, okay? So I'm going to choose chia seeds, and they're going to be soaked. So I'm going to click add. All right, so I've added that. Over here, click back to recipe. Now if I go down, the assumed nutrient gap no longer has fiber there because we've filled that assumed nutrient gap. Now we've got vitamin B10 we need to cover. I'm going to chuck in an egg or two. Back to recipe. Okay, and you're going to continue that way. Let's just fill these now. I'm going to add celery. Back to recipe. One more to go. No, oh no, that's it. That actually covered all those. So you can either dump this recipe by clicking start again, or you're totally cool with this one. So click this logo here, the Balanced Canine logo, view my dogs, click on Johnny. Now, where do you find the recipe? You're going to find it here under build a recipe. Okay, so it's all here, okay? What this is not going to tell you is how much parsley to feed, how much broccoli to feed. So we already know from Johnny's recipe. Let's just go back. View my dogs, Johnny. We already know that 62.5 grams needs to be fed of plant matter, right? And I've chosen things like chia seeds and broccoli. So it doesn't matter exactly how much of those that you're actually going to make up at 62.5%. That is totally up to you. There are no rules here, okay? The only rules will come into play, and you'll actually see it on that builder recipe, is things like kelp, where there is a high iodine content, where you don't want to overdo it. So it'll say for the user to research that more. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Now, let's say you don't have Johnny anymore. You can just remove Johnny. You can add up to 15 dogs. Okay. Now, this is a very nuts and bolts type of calculator. We've put an extra functionality of what we really liked and what we thought would work well for somebody who was new to fresh food feeding, that hopefully wouldn't get overwhelmed with the process. And over time, we will add our wish list items, things that make it even more easier and so forth. Unfortunately, all these things do cost money, and a developer has to actually be paid to do this. So we hope you appreciate what we've been able to provide so far, and that you really get a lot out of it. It's really important to understand that this is not a scientific feeding program. This is just helping you understand where some of those nutrients might lie, and here's kind of a base recipe, okay? Similar to how a healthy human would consume a healthy diet themselves, all right? If you have any questions, please go ahead and post them in the Fresh Food Feeding group. And as I said, over time, we'll add functionality and more user-friendly aspects to this. But for right now, we think we've got a nice little program, and we really hope that you enjoy it. Thank you for watching.